Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Movies That Move We, where we talk about the power, the beauty, and brilliance of Black cinema across the diaspora. I'm your host, Nikkei, co-host Zenny, and every week we take you on a journey through films that shape us, challenge us, and speak our stories out loud. Today, we will be talking about the film Sinners, Ryan Coogler's Sinners, because there's a number of movies with that title out there. And this movie was a big deal. It came out, Easter weekend? Came out Easter weekend, and here we are, the beginning of July, and we are still talking about this movie. Some people are on their 10th watch of the movies. Other people are seeing it for the first time. It just came out on streaming on Max. If you haven't seen it, don't be scared. Go check it out. Probably one of the, because there's always naysayers when there's a big movie. We kind of heard it leading in with Black Panther, and sure enough, a movie this big, you heard it again. I've heard people compare it to From Dusk Till Dawn with, what's his name? Salma Hayek and George Clooney.
Wasn't Tarantino in that too?
Tarantino, he played, what's his name's brother? Clooney's brother in the film. Cool movie. Yes, there are similarities. Two brothers committed crimes, traveling from one place to the other. They kidnap a minister and his kids. There's your religious element. And they end up down in Mexico at a bar, your juke joint. And they get attacked by vampires. That's where the similarities start and end. Ryan Coogler wrote and directed, and he and his wife are producers on the film, and he made this story. The genre is actually called American Gothic, but he put that Black element on it. And this is not the only Black American Gothic film. Eve's Bayou is another.
It does kind of have that feel, yeah.
Right, and what makes it that Black American Gothic is you have the religion, you have the spirituality, you have the old, back from Africa religion. And it all comes together to tell a story. You have your ghost, you have your mystical creatures like vampires. So he really put this all together so well. He put it together so well that I wasn't worried about a message.
Yeah.
I just went in and enjoyed a vampire movie the first time. But after watching it a few times, you know me, I'm always going to look for symbolism or something like that. And this movie is jam-packed. I need to go back and watch it a fifth time because I know there's more there to kind of grab and look. And I think this is a film that people are going to be talking about for a long time. So I've given you comparisons, but what is this story about? You have the Smokestack twins. Those are their nicknames. Elias and Elijah. What were they? The last name? Morris? I think it was Morris. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I don't remember last names. I do remember their first names, though.
Right. So they are these twins who have a reputation in their community as being a couple of Billy badasses. You say their names and people shiver.
Get scared, yeah.
Okay. And what makes them bad? The thing we know for sure that makes them bad is, was it smoke that killed his father?
Yeah. Like, he basically protected...
He was protecting his younger brother.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you do something like that, you as far as the environment back then being so religious, if you could kill somebody, you had the devil in you. It wasn't as simple as you were trying to protect somebody. You know, you killed your father. You know, these guys went off to war. They ended up in Chicago working for the mob. And with the money that they made, they came back home to start a juke joint. So one of the things that, after watching it the third time, that I noticed was how many times people called themselves sinners or made reference to being sinners. And one of the questions that popped up in my mind was, who gets to declare that? Who gets to call them sinners, and who gets to say when they're redeemed? Because the other character, Smoke and Stack's cousin Sammy, they called him Preacher Boy because his father, played by Saul Williams, who's well-known poet and actor, he was the pastor for the community, so he was preaching heavy against blues music and, you know, telling his son to stay away from playing in the juke joints, put the guitar down. The guitar was the embodiment of evil as far as his father was concerned. And his father knew the origins of that guitar, so everything tied to it had a negative connotation. And there's a lot with just those small scenes that he was in also. Go ahead and talk about what you saw as far as how the twins were regarded and how much religion played into the whole thing from your perspective.
I mean, going back to, I guess, what you were saying about when their name is mentioned, there's kind of this negative connotation behind it, and it's also very much like fear. Like, everybody in town that knows them is scared of them. Anybody that knows of them knows that there is something bad attached with their name, so they kind of don't want to deal with it. You know, that word sin is being thrown around a lot, and it is like a huge thing revolving them because of everything they've been doing. And, you know, especially the fact that they're coming back into town to basically open this juke joint. I mean, juke joints are not known to be a place to praise the Lord and be sanctified, you know.
All right.
You usually go there, you drink, you dance, and you gyrate, you
and
do smoking, you know, you're doing things that to a religious standpoint are not things that God wants us to do. So, you know, Sammy being this kid that has a love for music in general, but really wants to dive into the blues. And now that, you know, Smoke and Stack are coming into town and kind of offering this opportunity for that to kind of showcase, it's like his dad doesn't want him to get caught up in that, because he's all about, you know, staying sanctified, not being tempted. He reads a scripture in the beginning talking about temptation and staying away from that. And I just kind of feel like, I also read somewhere that each like character in the film, even though the word sinner is being thrown around a lot, each character in the film actually represents one of the 7 sins, like their personality traits or what they're dealing with. So it's like, I really feel like he did a really good job of like just tying all of that together in like this neatly wrapped film, I guess. And it is kind of like you get a new nugget every time you watch it, because honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I've only seen the movie twice since it's come out. But the second time watching it, I was like, oh, yeah. I didn't notice that before. Yeah. And especially revolving around like the symbolism and everything like that. And the religious aspect and all of that. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I think he did a really good job with that. I guess like when you were talking about like your question about like who can really determine who's a sinner or not, I kind of, in a weird way, I felt like they were kind of like, each of them were acknowledging that they were sinners in their own ways. Like it was kind of like not this thing of like, I'm shying away from it. It was kind of like they stood in that and they knew that, especially what's his name's character,
Delta Slim.
Yes,
Delroy Lindo played Delta Slim.
What I saw in him was just like so much. It was kind of almost like a lot of self-reflection, a lot of mirroring. Like when he would talk, it was like he really went down and recollected a lot from his life and kind of what he's been through, what he's seen, things like that. And even him referencing like he doesn't feel like he'll be here that much longer. You know, it's like I feel like he was kind of I guess recognizing where he went wrong in life, but it was kind of almost like it's too late for me to change now. Like whatever happens to me happens, but I'm gonna kind of, you know, share these tidbits. He was sharing a lot of tidbits with the Smokestack twins. He was sharing a lot of stories with Sammy because he sees that he kind of wants to follow the same path he's going down with the music.
The talent, yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I felt like they all kind of spoke on their sins and even recognized it a little bit. Like, I don't know.
But did they dwell in it?
I don't think all of them did. Again, in a way, I kind of feel like Delta Slim did a little bit because it was kind of like while he's talking about all these things, you can tell he's just like, you can tell he's down, you can tell he's sad about it or that he feels a way about it. And it's kind of like he's just come to grips with the fact that like things didn't work out the way he wanted them to.
How much of that do you think for him, because he was an alcoholic?
Yeah,
he would sit at the train station, he'd play his harmonica, people would throw some coins into his hat and he'd just sing, and then he'd go down to the juke joint, the one that everyone knew about in town. He'd play down there, and you know that was his cycle, but he was numbing himself from stuff, I think.
Yeah, because he knew that to go after what he really wanted or what he really wanted to accomplish, it would have to take him away from the sin or the kind of vice that he was already wrapped up in, which, at least from my perspective, I feel like he regretted, but it's like it's too late to get out of this now.
I think it was a little more than that. I think because remember when they were riding to the location of the juke joint, because it hadn't been built yet, and he saw the guys digging the ditch, the prisoners digging the ditch, and he stood up in the car and was like, "You keep your head up, keep your head up," and they were like, hey Slim, and then the gun went off. The overseer shot the gun and they all hunkered back down to what they were doing. And Sammy asked him, he says, "You know them?" He said, "Yeah, every last one of them." This is a scene in the movie that a lot of people talk about, but I think talking it out right now, it's like, okay, this is the root of his depression. This is a thing that he's trying to forget. And I think the way Ryan Coogler filmed it was absolutely brilliant. Something that we talk about all the time, or I talk about all the time, is how when we have a story set in this time period or earlier, a lot of people are like, I'm not going to watch it. I don't want to see people in slavery or more than this, blah, blah, blah. But I think he put this whole story into that time period in such a way that you knew you knew Jim Crow was present, you knew these folks were sharecroppers, you knew racism exists, and he introduced it subtly, But this is probably the scene where it was most put in your face.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't put it in your face.
Mm-hmm.
He Delta Slim started talking about what happened, how he knew those guys, the friend he lost, the fact that he, I guess, was imprisoned at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's telling the story, as he's giving the narration of his friend being accused, and then who got shot and who got lynched, you hear the sounds in the background.
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler very easily could have given you a flashback view, which probably would have shook a lot of people up, but I feel like that's an easy approach to that story within the story. But the sound was just as effective.
Impactful. Yeah. Because I'm one of those people, it's not so much that I want to move past it. It's more so I just don't like to see the visuals of that, because it is very, I guess, traumatic or hurtful or whatever.
Right.
So, I do appreciate that he did that. I could see where that's definitely a part of Slim that kind of created this monster of him becoming who he was. The one thing I will say with all the characters, which I noticed in each scene, that everybody was kind of introduced, or even when two people that had interactions had to kind of talk about past stuff, I noticed when it came to those skeletons that they were dealing with in their closet, they kind of they were at the point in the movie, I feel like, where a lot of them were taking responsibility for it, or they were taking accountability for it, even down to Mary and Stack and Smoke and Annie and all that. It's when they're having these dialogues with each other about what happened in the past, they kind of take ownership. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have left, or maybe I should have took you with me, or whatever. It's but this is why I made the decision I made.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of I feel like throughout the movie, the characters themselves kind of called out their own sins. It wasn't really this religious figure, anything like that, was coming in to have to do that, or even God himself was really coming in having to tell them, you were wrong for this. A lot of them kind of recognized their own sins from the jump, as you're watching the movie.
As you speak of that, there's something that popped into my head, because this is overall, it's a story about sin and redemption. And the scripture popped into my head. I think it's in Psalms 107. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Did they say so? What brought about their redemption? And that's why I asked the question.
I honestly feel
who decides who's sinful, and who gets to decide they're forgiven?
I feel like
is
them
that
all
their choice, or somebody else has to do it?
I kind of felt like what triggered it was the camaraderie and the reconciliation of all of them. I feel like they kind of all came in as individuals. They were off doing their own things and dealing with their own problems. But then once they came together to do this juke joint together, they had a lot of mirror moments. They had a lot of conversations amongst one another. And it kind of, I feel like, came out then. Even the conversation that Smoke had with Sammy was yo, you're a good kid. You're a pastor's kid. You don't want to live this life that we live. We live this life because we had to, but you don't have to. You have a choice. And if you don't live your life the way, in the safe way, I'm not going to let you walk out of here. That was very much his mentality. And it's I feel like it was a lot of, even though, they're opening this juke joint and it's about having fun and making money and all of that, I felt like it was a night for them to do that, but it was also a night of they really had to kind of sit with themselves and kind of deal with some harder issues, and they actually conversated about it amongst each other, called each other out, made it known like, yo, this is what I had to deal with. And
Right. He told his cousin, "Hey, you know what? Don't do it the way we did it. There's a town just south of here. Go there. You want to play your music? Play your music for the church, but don't do this. Don't do this." And that, I mean, at that point, Sammy was what, just 21, 22 maybe. At this point, and he's just getting out into the world. His father was like, "I want you to preach the sermon tomorrow," and he was like, "Look, Dad, I'm 20 some odd years old. I've done my work for the day. Now I'm gonna go be free." And that was another theme that was in the movie.
Was
freedom. And it wasn't as much as it was about being free from the world that existed, as far as slavery and sharecropping and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was just about them having that space to themselves where it's like, this is who I am.
And it was also, that's what I'm saying, is like, I felt like them coming together like that and talking about this stuff, it was almost like they freed themselves from a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because it was like they were having these open dialogues about their individual sins or just regrets that they had in general. And I don't know, I feel like with all the fun and everything, even what happens after,
mm-hmm.
it allowed them to release that. It even allowed people to make certain decisions. So, I don't know, but I feel like it was more so the characters themselves that kind of, I guess, answered for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things, while we're talking about the role that religion plays in this, when Smoke was talking to Annie, his girlfriend, mother of their now gone child, she gave him a voodoo bag. Mary was played by Wunmi Masako, excuse me. She gave him a voodoo bag for protection. And his big question, their child had died. When he returned, the first place he went was to the baby's grave, which was at her house. And he was asking, how come your God didn't save my child?
Mm-hmm.
How come the voodoo bag, the quote is, "You got magic, you got any magic to bring my brother back? Got a mojo bag for him." And while she believed in the power of voodoo, he doubted. His uncle was a pastor. He and his brother were in World War I. They saw a lot of death. They saw freedom in other places, but they also saw a lot of death. They probably, working for the mob, had to do some killing themselves. Mm-hmm. And he was quietly calculating, okay, where is God in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
As big and bad as he was looking for that. And who said, Delta Slim. He was talking to Preacher Boy. There's the scene where he's at the piano before the juke joint opens, and he's encouraging Sammy as far as his music is concerned, but then he's also giving him a little bit of a history lesson. And this is also the thing that brings Remick. What he's talking about is foreshadowing of Remick showing up.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "The same spirit that flows through these church folk flow through us. This here blues, it flows in a different way. It just flows in a different way. More honest way, if you ask me. See, the blues wasn't forced on us like that religion. Nah, we brought this with us from home." And Sammy says, "From the Delta." And this point kind of hit me when I heard the line. It hit harder when I read it. Um, Delta responds, Africa, preacher boy, motherland. The way we do it is a little different than the way they do it, but sacred still. Sacred and big. Don't let nobody tell you different. Um, I don't know. I guess when we're taught history, again, when I was in school and she was in school, they teach that period of slavery is something so far away. You know, it's ancient, way back in the day. But we're talking about 1935, around that time is when this story takes place. And when I do the math, my grandmother was born in 1922. And so it's like, it's not
Really not
that
that
far away. There's somebody,
and it's very
that I
watered down
Right.
history that we get.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's so much deeper, and there's so much more history behind it that we're not shown.
Well, in this context, the thing that I'm thinking about is Delta knew, if not his African family that came over. There was somebody on the plantation he grew up that was one generation away.
Before, yeah.
You know? So it's like,
He's basically telling him it's like a broader, think bigger, think outside the box. Like, we didn't just pop up here out of nowhere. Like,
well, not even that. We're the root.
Yeah.
We're the root of it all. You know? And so long before, and the opening credits, the monologue at the opening credit talks about the spirit of the music and how it draws people in, you know. And then it gets to the point where they're in the juke joint, and what is her name? Not Mary. Ooh, what is her name?
Who, Annie?
No. Who did he name? Pearline. Pearline is on the stage singing, and Pearline's played by Jamie Lawson. This was Sammy's love interest. He was into this girl. But when she got up and started singing, all of a sudden, it started with the blues, but then you went to the future to rap music, and to soul music, and even Bo and Grace Chow. Bo played by Yao, Grace played by Lee Julie, sorry.
Their ancestors were there too.
Their Asian ancestors were represented. I believe they had American Indians represented, all the music, but it's like it all kind of stems from the blues. Everybody has something that is cultural, you know. So I don't know. I think overall the way they tied religion and spiritual and culture together, and even tied it into the music, I think he did a fantastic job.
The one scene that I really there was a couple of scenes actually that I noticed they use a lot of sight and sound to represent spiritual energy. Was when Smoke and Annie were having a conversation in her house. She's burning incense, but it's just the smoke is flowing everywhere. And as they're talking, like they're standing across from each other, but in between them, you just see the smoke flowing.
Right. That spiritual connection.
And then there's a point in where they're talking. I think, like, I forget what was said now, but something is said, and there's this vibrational sound that kind of represents the spirits that I believe Annie was talking about. Because he's questioning her, like, well, you know, what's with all this? And I don't understand it. And, you know, how is this really working and all of that? And she's explaining it to him.
Yeah, and that's the point where she was like, I don't know how it works, but it worked because you're here.
Yeah, and when she like had the bags and everything, and she took it off him and she was blessing it and everything, you hear these like especially when you're in the movies, you hear it. It's this loud vibrational sound, and it's like whenever you're talking about spirits and things like that, and trying to, I guess, get in touch with them and all that. A lot of the time, like these like ghost hunters and stuff, they use machines that will pick up on frequency. So it's like they're using that. When Sammy finished singing his song at the very end, there's this very high pitched, loud frequency sound at the end of it, where it's like, and then Remick comes. So it's like that's kind of what called one, all those ancestors coming to be in the juke joint with them, but that's what kind of signaled to Remick, like, oh, Sammy, I need to go wherever he is,
right?
Because he's the one that's harnessing this energy.
He has that, yeah.
So it's like, you know, for me, it was like when I first saw the movie, I'm noticing that off the bat, you know, and then I just noticed how they used that with a lot of the music, the sounds, the images, even down to like colors. I also recognize, like, you know, obviously they're using these colors to identify each character and even like each character's love interests. But even down to like the personality trait, which again, I don't want to say it's the gospel, but at least what I took away from it was that with the red and the blue, with both the brothers, to me it represented like their temperatures and their personality.
The hot and cold.
Yeah, like, you know, Stack is red. He's always kind of quick. He's impulsive. He's always ready to do something. He's always ready to party, have fun. Whereas Smoke and Blue is a little bit more calculated. He's practical. He kind of wants to observe everything first. He's the quietest out of the both of them. So it's kind of like he's the more cool one or level-headed one. So even like little stuff like that, I kind of noticed, and I was like, yeah, like there is so much symbolism in this. And I'm pretty sure if you just keep like watching it over and over again, which again, I've only seen it twice. If I kept watching it again and again, I'd probably start picking up even more stuff.
Yeah. Well, the scene you're talking about with Smoke and Annie, when he first greets her outside by their child's grave, as soon as she speaks, you see all of these white blossoms kind of float by. And so even before they go inside to start talking about spiritual matters, you're like, yeah, there's something with her. You get that straight off. And I'm just seeing on my notes here, their last name was Moore. Sammy was played by Miles Canton, which, y'all, that was his real voice, if you didn't know. That's how he sings. And Remick was played by Jack O'Connell. I had to dig down deep into the historical connection, because he sings about that song that he's singing about where they're all the vampires are dancing around. He's actually telling the history about how he came here, and he comes in cunning when he finally encounters Sammy and his cousins and the rest of the gang, and he's like, you know, we come from similar situations, you know, they put me out. And when you look at the history of the Irish coming to the United States, and when you hear people talk about the potato famine, and they compare it to African American experience, or not just African American, African descended people's experience with slavery, you know, he was like, well, they booted me off my land. And what happened during the potato famine is that the English didn't want to have anything to do with the Irish, because the Irish were like, you know, we're Catholic. Take on the king's religion? Absolutely not. We're Catholic. We're just fine being Catholic, and Catholic is what we're going to be. And so when the potato famine hit, England said, we're not going to help you. And so a lot of people died. Some of them were sent by England to the American shores, because the British were like, we don't want you here anyway, go on, get.
Mm-hmm.
And there were those who, with the last few dollars in their pocket, came to America. And they came on the ships that were used at one point
For slaves.
to transport Africans. So it's like that's the connection. I'll let y'all go down the hole a little bit deeper, so that you can learn about what happened once they got here. I will say that within one generation they were able to assimilate into white culture, but you'll have to check out what happened. Keep in mind, Lynn, why am I calling her Lynn? Bo and Grace are Chinese descended. There's a certain relationship between even the Irish and the Chinese. I'll let you go down that rabbit hole on your own. But he was singing about that, and he tried to use that to connect. Okay. And then you get into the conversation about appropriation. Give me what you got. You know, give me what you got. I'll take your life to get it, but give me what you got, kind of thing. So it's, I think overall this thing went deep. Like I said, you can keep going layer after layer after layer after layer. There is so much here. We can't talk about this film without mentioning Ruth E. Carter. Ruth was the costume designer for Black Panther, which Ryan Coogler did. And when she goes in on costume design, she's not just saying, oh, this is what people in 1935 wore, so we'll just put them in that. She dug deep. Not only did she decide on the fashion, but she knew what was in the script and researched based on that. At the beginning, I mentioned this is Black American Gothic. And so she decided the colors that I'm going to use, the colors that people are going to see the most. And if you pay attention, again, all of this was done so beautifully that it's not, oh, look, they're wearing red, white, and blue. But she chose the colors so well to tell the story. And part of the story that she was telling was, these are American people. You know, so it fits into that Black American Gothic theme. Annie was wearing blue, matching Smoke's blue hat, you know, pairing them up. The one person they said that they wanted to have wear red was Haley Steinberg's character Mary. They wanted to put her in red, but the scene that she's introduced in, everybody else was in muted tones, and having her walk up in red would have been jarring to the whole scene. So they put her in pink, a faint shade of red. You didn't see her in a red dress until it was covered in blood, until that pink dress was covered in blood. But throughout the whole thing, she used those colors. You hear them talking about paints. If you know about color, you know haint blue is a color that people, mostly in the South, would paint some portion of their entryway with as protection. Because, you know, a ghost would not come into your house with that blue color being there. I forget the entire reason why. It's also why in some places you see bottle trees, and they have blue bottles on it. It's to ward off evil spirits. But I mean, everything that was done in this film, and again, you can't just watch it once. You know, the first time you watch it, you might be, oh, that was a good vampire story. Never thought I'd see it told that way. But by the second, third, fifth, sixth time you watch it, you're pulling out more. And even in pulling out that more, again, I don't feel like the story was, look at what these white folks did to us. It's look at how we related to each other in our space.
And it's like I don't know, for me it was kind of a tearjerker because it's like you get so invested in each character's situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like seeing how the day started one way and then it's ending another way, and to think about all the stuff that these characters have been through throughout the day and also throughout their lives.
Mm-hmm.
It can be kind of like, wow, like it makes you emotional. And then even seeing, like, you know, some of the romantic situations, it kind of, it's stuff you could probably relate to, but like it's just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like especially in the romantic settings in this movie, I feel like there was a lot about sacrifice that was represented.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I feel like the whole movie, honestly, let me not even say the romantic aspect of it, but like the relationships that you see in this movie, it's a lot about sacrifice and like putting someone else's needs above your own.
Right, and you saw that with Delta Slim.
Yeah.
In the end, because again, he was talking about, you know, I've met the devil so many times, and you know, next time he comes, I'm taking him.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end, yeah, he lived up to that challenge.
The other thing too was that I noticed with Remick was, and it was funny because I was actually like reading a scripture with my Bible study group like about a week ago, and when I read it and then we're talking about this, I'm like, huh, there's a lot of similarity to it. But when me and my friends were watching the movie and we were talking about like the songs Remick was singing and kind of the way he was talking to them and things like that, it was very much like a siren like way. Mm-hmm. Like it was like, oh, I'm gonna kind of tempt them in this direction based off of like their struggles or what they're going through, or try to like kind of take them off their mark. And back to like, you know, from a religious standpoint, the devil always shows up in these different shapes and forms all the time. Mm-hmm. And he always shows up when you're in these trying situations.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I feel like Remick is like, when he's talking to them, it's like, oh, well, you've been through so much, and I can completely understand that. He relates it back to something he's been through. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, let's just come together and just be one. Like, it's just almost like the pattern and the tone of it is very much like a siren, or even if you want to take it that far and say Satan or the devil, it's very much like,
that's what they started calling him. Siren is usually a female. It's usually a mermaid. Mermaid's female.
Yeah.
But yeah, they started calling him the devil.
Yeah.
By the end, because hello.
I mean, it was very just like the serpent in the garden, like, hey, mm-hmm. you know, I know you like that fruit over there.
Right.
So why don't you just go take a bite? Yeah, like it was hurt. His energy and his vibe was very much that, mm-hmm. and like he would feed off of what you were already kind of like thinking in your own head. He feeds off of that and is like, this is how I'm gonna get them to do what I want them to do.
Right, right. So I would love to hear from you guys. Just a few questions, and we did put some of this in our group if you want to go back and check that out on our Facebook group, Movies That Move We. But, you know, do you think Sinners is one of Ryan Coogler's most personal films? In watching this, I went back and watched Fruitvale Station.
I watched that one.
Yeah, and that's that. I avoided that one for a long time, but in doing this, I was like, let me see from the very beginning, because that's one of his first movies. That's his first.
That was like his first release. Yeah.
how did he take on telling a story then? We've seen how he took on telling a comic book hero story.
Which he did beautifully.
I mean, it can't get any better. And I've only watched one episode of Ironheart because I'm trying to let that build up so I can binge it.
Well, now it's out. Like, it's completely out now.
Out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but talk to us a bit about, do you think it's his most personal film? Is there something you think that went deeper? Where is that question? I did have one question that I did ask in the group. It's going to take me a second to find. But what lingers for you? What is the scene that moved you the most? There's a lot of talk about that scene with Delta Slim. There were a lot of people who watched it, and especially if they're from the South or have family from the South, they were like, I've seen relatives do that. But talk to us about some of the other scenes. And, watch the film if you haven't watched it yet. We didn't give away a lot of spoilers.
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will say I think the most, again, in tearjerker for me, but I think the most impactful scene to me was the end.
Yeah, the after credit
scene. I was crying like a baby because it was just like, I don't know. Again, it's about investment. It's like when you're invested to these characters and you hear their whole story and what they've been through, and even down to, their own things that they kind of had to deal with emotionally. And when we're talking about the sins and everything that they've kind of had to overcome and all that, it's just that ending was really powerful to me, the way he wrapped the whole thing up.
Yeah.
I think he did a really, really good job with that. And I don't know. I feel like this is one of those movies that's like an onion. It just has a bunch of layers to it. It's not just... And I will say with other films that I've seen that Ryan Coogler does, I feel like this is probably the most... In one film, I'll say, is the most, I guess, I could compare it to an onion. There's just so many layers that you can pull back from. I do feel like, because he also did Creed, I believe, too.
Yeah.
And that's one of my other favorites. I feel like he does a really good job with telling the story and allowing the person watching it to peel back these different layers without him really having to over explain stuff with the characters or anything like that. It's you can kind of just do it yourself, but he tells stories so well. I don't know.
Well, this I believe is the 4th or 5th movie that he's done with Michael B. Jordan. And you got to give as much credit to Michael B. Jordan because they went and researched how twins interact with each other and not just read a book. They talked to twins about what it's like to be a twin. And I wish I wrote down the name of his body double because I would love to give that guy credit too. If you've bought the movie on streaming, there are the additional scenes about the background of making the movie, and they show you how they were able to get these scenes where it's both twins in the same scene fighting with each other, interacting, handing off the cigarette, all of that stuff. But Michael B. Jordan's performance, he better get 2 awards. Anytime there's an award show, they better give him 2 for his playing 2 different people. It's almost creepy how well he did it.
I mean, with him playing a twin, yeah, they had their similarities, but they were very different personalities. And he did a really good job. You felt like you were watching 2 different people. But he honestly, I don't know if he had anything to do with this movie. I don't think he did, as far as the production end of it. But I know he had a lot to do with Creed.
Yeah.
Like I think he was like a co-producer or whatever on that.
Yeah, he wasn't a co-producer.
He wasn't on this. I want to say, I think he was on Black Panther 2, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Yeah. I think he had something to do with Black Panther 2.
I don't recall.
I don't remember 100% with that, but I know for a fact he was with Creed, and I think it's to the point now where he's talking about doing more Creeds. Like Michael B. Jordan himself is talking about he wants to do more stuff with the Creed series or whatever. But yeah, like even that, I feel like he's gotten his footing even with the production end of it, because he's very much involved with the behind the scenes as well as being an actor. It doesn't just stop at, oh yeah, I'm coming, I'm going to play this role and then I'm out. Like he's also seems to be very involved with the background with stuff, the production too.
End of it, yeah. So all of that said, folks, this is one I'll keep on repeat. The DVD, because remember, if you buy it on streaming, because I couldn't wait. As soon as it came out, normally I'm the one, I'll wait 6 months until Fandango has a sale on it, and I buy it half price. This one was, But when you buy on streaming, you're buying a license, so if for any reason the licensing deal runs out with Fandango or Apple or wherever you purchased it, you no longer have that movie. You're basically long-term renting the movie on streaming. So the Blu-ray comes out, I think, in December.
Really?
Yeah. So
oh, that's weird.
You can pre-order it.
That's so weird.
Why is that weird?
It never took that long for movies to become DVDs.
Listen, how long have we been talking about this movie already? We've been talking about it since it was released in April. And here we are in July, we're still talking about it. It just came out on streaming, and you figure by the time it starts to wind down a few months from now, it's gonna be Christmas time. Keep the conversation going. This movie did so well. I think it made the production costs back.
No, it I think it tripled it actually.
Yeah.
Like they basically made back the production amount plus more. So he did.
But that was done.
He went above and beyond what he was supposed to do. Yeah. Because he made all that money back and then had extra. Right.
And so this keeps going. A lot of people want him to do another part, but he said, nah, this is it. The story is the story. I can respect that as a writer. Sometimes you write something where there could be a lot more you can explain, but then it's gonna be watered down. So I get what he's saying.
Yeah, and honestly, like it's very like bittersweet for me, because it's like I respect it as an artist. Like you want to just kind of like preserve what you already wrote and just keep it that way, and keep its like purity or whatever. Right. You don't want to really mess with it or taint it too much, but like then there's also this aspect of me where it's like, oh, well, he could do so much more with it, or he could even create like another different story where they tie into it, like they tie into that universe.
And as much as I want that, I'm like, this is as close to perfection as.
But I did hear something about. I don't know how true it is or if it's actually going to happen. But I did hear something about how Warner Brothers, even if he decides like he's not going to do anything with it, they want to do something with it after,
because they have ownership over the rights for the next 25 years. But anyhow, that's all we have for today. We could keep going for another hour, but y'all are busy, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us for this episode. This is an episode that we were supposed to do back in June, but life has been lifing, and we did want to make sure we saw this movie a few times before we had the discussion about it. We will be back sometime in September-ish. We'll let you know the definite date. Keep an eye on our Facebook page, Movies That Move We. That's where we have a bulk of our conversations. Keep up with us on YouTube. As soon as we release something, you'll be the first to know about it. And keep the conversation going. Comment, tell us your thoughts. Talk about some other movies that you'd love to see us do. Okay? So until next time, guys, thank you once again for joining us. Bye.
Bye.